All right, so just a couple quick things about the Institute for Local Government and this particular webinar. So ILG, if you go to the next slide, speaks a little bit about we're a nonprofit organization and we're nonpartisan, and we are here to help local governments. You know, our mission is to really think about how do you make sure that on the ground implementation of policies and procedures are effective, that they're working, that you can operationalize some of the things that you're required to do. And so we work really closely with our three affiliates, the League of California Cities, CSAC, and the Special Districts Association, to bring you practical, easy to use resources so that you can just do your jobs well and do your jobs better. We know that times are tough in local government. There's always something more to do, always some other crisis or fire to put out, literally or figuratively, and we want to help you do that. Next slide. So we have discussed over the last year and a half, even more, you know, equity's been one of the key pillars and key values of ILG for at least the last 3 years, if not longer. We first incorporated it into, you know, our real values in writing 3 years ago. And ever since then, we've been thinking about how do we tackle this issue and bring it to local governments and identify it as a way, as something that we can collaborate on, as something that we can work together to advance. And so our vision is for local agency success in this area, which includes things like cross-sector collaboration, peer learning, and really thinking about how can cities, counties, and special districts learn from each other, work together, to think about what equity means for them and common ground some of these concepts on equity, and thinking about what it is you can do in your agency, regardless of where you are in this equity journey. How can you move forward and advance some of the issues you'd like to tackle? And so we're going to be building learning communities, we're going to provide some technical assistance, and we're going to offer some resources and trainings. And today's is part of that strategy. This webinar is on cultural intelligence. It's Cultural Intelligence 101, and it's just about an hour and a half, 2-hour session today. And we're going to be talking about the foundational elements of cultural intelligence. This is the first in a series, and we will be certainly opening up the rest of the series very soon. But this is the first webinar, and we're so excited to have you all here to learn about this topic. Next slide. So our trainer today is Jacques Whitfield. If you were in on the information session we hosted a few weeks ago, you have met Jacques, and you know what you are in store for. And it's a fantastic opportunity for us to all learn from this very seasoned expert. He has over nearly 25 years in HR management experience. He is well-trained in diversity, equity, and inclusion. He just has so much insight to give us. And I certainly am excited to work with Jacques on this project. And to learn more about cultural intelligence with all of you. Before I turn it over to Jacques, I will just do, in terms of a housekeeping note, make sure that know that you can reach out to us via chat at any time. It's safest if you communicate with both of Jacques and I, and we should be listed as the hosts of today's session. I'll be monitoring the chat and helping Jacques behind the scenes, and he will be leading our discussion and our training today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to your capable hands, Jacques. Thank you so much for being here.
And thank you so very much, Erica, and good morning, everyone. I am joining you today. So Erica and I play this game every time we connect because I'm always traveling. And so the first question that Erica asked me is like, well, where am I today? So I am joining you from the campus of Rutgers University in East Brunswick, New Jersey. I was just finishing up presenting at a national conference and talking about DEI. And now I get to virtually transport myself all the way back to the West Coast, where I get to share with all of you wonderful folks. It's a pleasure to be with you. We are excited to have you, and we've got a lot of great things in store for you. So why don't we begin? So these are our ground rules for today's presentation. And again, because you folks are all such rock stars, I'm just going to thank you in advance. I'm going to thank you in advance for being present. And we recognize that in a virtual space, being present looks different to different folks. There are so many of you with your cameras on, you are engaged, and we feel your energy, and thank you for that. And we also recognize that there are some of you who are joining us who are doing what we say in the transformational space of living in the both and. You may be completing another assignment or taking care of a loved one, and that is totally okay because this course is all about cultural intelligence, and you're going to learn that cultural intelligence is an extension of emotional intelligence, and so we get to practice what we preach in that space. So thank you for being engaged and participating. And we know that thankfully we are coming out of a global pandemic. I remember when we first started, Erica, that I thought was just going to be 6 weeks long, and 2 years later, we're still coming out of it. And so what that means is that many of us are still in the virtual space, which means there's a lot of activity online and on the information highway. So don't panic if there are technical difficulties. We've got really smart people on both sides of us who will be working diligently to get us reconnected as quickly as possible. But we certainly don't anticipate any problems. Fine. And again, the next ground rule, because this is a course that is foundational in emotional intelligence, we are inviting you to set your intentions to expand your worldview. We're focusing on what is that next level of elevation. Many of us are used to the transactional nature of trainings. This gets to be different. This gets to be, because it is transformational, we're really focusing on not just the external, but really focusing on internal, really focus on those ways of being that we get to create more high-performing organizations, that we get to create more effective teams. And so we're going to be giving you lots of invitations today. And the first invitation we give you is give yourself permission to expand your worldview. Give yourself permission to grow and to change and to expand. It's, so often as we go through our everyday lives, we never do a self-reflection check-in and ask ourselves the question, how do I know what I think I know? And so a lot of the ways of being that we're going to incorporate, not only in this session, but in the following sessions, we're going to constantly be giving those invitations. And again, and our last ground rule, we want you to learn and we want you to have fun doing it. Here's our syllabus for today's training. We'll have an icebreaker, and we're going to do the icebreaker in the chat feature because there's a lot of curriculum that we want to share with you, and we want to make sure that you experience everything that Erica and I have intended for you to experience today. We'll do a brief overview of the cultural intelligence series and actually Erica's already done that. So we'll move right into the definition of cultural intelligence. We're going to talk about one of the critical and essential elements of mastering cultural intelligence, and that is embracing having a mindset that is an expansive mindset, growth mindset, that we're calling the concept of acknowledgement. And we're going to juxtapose that to the mindset that many humans have, which is rather fixed and closed, and that we're calling agreement. So we're going to talk about agreement versus acknowledgement. And we're going to give you another invitation, which is how do we seek alignment, which we're going to learn is agreement without judgment. We'll talk about some practical applications of cultural intelligence, and we're going to give you a group visioning exercise. As Erica shared with you just a few moments ago, there aren't going to be any breakout sessions in this foundational session. However, in the next sessions, and we hope to see you all there will be plenty of opportunity for interactivity and growth. As always, we'll have an opportunity for questions and feedback. And with all of our learning modalities, we always offer a reading list so that the learning and education that is taking place in the virtual classroom gets to continue until we meet again. Alex, I see you have your hand raised. Yes. If you could be so kind as to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I was looking for the chat function. I accidentally pressed the hand raise button.
Oh, okay, no worries. Did you find it, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. This is a safe space. When we designed the Cultural Intelligence Unit series, and this series has been launched for about a year and a half, and we've gotten really powerful feedback. But as we were developing this modality, it was really important that we create the concept of safety and emotional safety. And there are good reasons why. Conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion can be difficult, can create angst, anxiety for a whole host of reasons. First of all, many folks who are engaging on this journey are well-intended and well-meaning and want to ask questions, but don't know the right words, the right terminology to say. And there's this fear of, I don't want to offend, I don't want to create greater harm, so let me just be quiet and let me just keep all my thoughts to myself. So in developing this training series, we wanted to give every human in this space permission. We want to give you permission to disarm. We wanted to give you permission to create connection and engagement with other humans that are powerfully represented in the virtual space. And we wanted to give you permission to get it wrong. And I said that right. We want to give you permission to get it wrong, because before we can get it right, we have to get it wrong. How many of us, whether we're learning how to ride a bicycle, skateboard, any of the things, I know myself was a very clumsy kid growing up. And so as I was learning how to ride a bicycle, it was a bumpy road for me. Now, 58 years later, I have mastered that, but it doesn't mean that it didn't have its difficulties. And so we wanted to provide a framework that would give folks the safety, the comfort, the support to get it wrong and have it be okay. Another thing, because this framework of courses is grounded in emotional intelligence, we powerfully have removed all judgment. This is not a shame and blame session. This is not a session or framework where we're going to talk about one group of people took advantage of another group of people and create that kind of energy. Now, yes, we will acknowledge the lived experience of every single human. And in the acknowledgement of that lived experience, our bodies may evoke an emotional response. And through the lens of emotional intelligence, we get to regulate those responses. We get to be aware of those emotional responses, and we get to recognize that the purpose of those emotional responses, again, it's yet an invitation to grow, an invitation for greater awareness. What is it that we didn't know, and what becomes our next level of elevation? This is not a conversation about politics or partisanship. What you're going to learn, that DEI through the lens of cultural intelligence, is all about engagement. Engagement with our team members, employee engagement within our organizations, engagement with our leadership, and more importantly, engagement within our respective communities. This is a human conversation of how we get to be more effective humans and how we get to create more effective teams, recognizing that we have different opinions and different worldviews and different perspectives. And that is a good thing and a positive thing. And so in this space, this is not about right or wrong. This is not about good or bad. This is not about, oh, well, here's the cookie cutter version of what they're doing in XYZ city or XYZ state. So we're going to give you the cookie cutter version and we're going to force feed it, or we're going to feed you with a fire hose, or any of those analogies that are really unpleasant. This is all about how we get to continue our individual journeys of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and how we get to be more effective in that space. This is certainly not about judgment, not about right or wrong, and we give you permission to be transparent to the level and to the comfort that you get to be. You get to ask any question you want to ask. One of my covenants with Erica is that I am your answer guy, and we can go wherever you want to go. But I give you permission to be authentically yourselves. I give you permission to enjoy this journey. I give you permission to expand and to grow and to celebrate our humanity. So there are two ways of being to experience today. And this is our final invitation of all the invitations that we're giving you. So you'll see before you two images of two beautiful birds. There's the bald eagle and there is the ostrich. Very powerful and impactful within their respective ecosystems. Again, this is not about right or wrong. Let's take a look at the ostrich. Again, beautiful, majestic bird. And here we see in this image, the ostrich doing what it has been stereotypically known to do, and that is bury its head in the sand. Now, I'm sure from the ostrich's perspective, it is safe, it is comfortable, it is all cozy in the warm sand, right? But in terms of situational awareness of what's going on above ground, probably not so much for the ostrich because the ostrich can't see with its head buried in the sand. And that certainly is a way you can take on these trainings. And we know humans like that, right? The folks who see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, they're very armored, they're very guarded. And there are obviously reasons for that. And we don't judge that, but we certainly say that is certainly one way to take on this training. Now, let's juxtapose that with the image of the bald eagle. The eagle, known to be commonly called the king of the birds, right? Because this bird can fly higher than any other bird species on the planet. And an interesting thing about the eagle has the ability to fly through all sorts of aerial turbulence and winds and rains and storms and all the things, right, that are in the atmosphere. And the eagle can keep soaring and keep soaring and keep soaring until it reaches what they say on American Airlines, the Southwest, that a cruising comfortable altitude where it has overcome all of the turbulence and all the adversity, and what it can see is a clear, unobstructed view of its vision, of its horizon. And so as you're taking on what are the ways of being to really maximize our conversations today, our invitation to you is take on the way of being of the bald eagle. Yes, there may be some things in the way, there may be some aerial turbulence, but the other side of that is a clear and unobstructed view of where you get to go and where you get to grow. And we promise you the view is going to be beautiful. So here's our icebreaker activity. We believe that gratitude opens the door to more. And as we're engaging again in emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence, we wanted to ground ourselves in gratitude. And this is a wonderful, fun icebreaker activity that we've done quite a bit, and it's called Rose, Bud, and Thorn. And we're going to participate in this icebreaker activity through the chat. So let's get those fingers ready. So the rose is something that you're grateful for or thankful for. The world is opening up. Many of us are grateful for our employment. We are grateful for, our families, our health, things of that nature. A thorn is something that you've been challenged about, whether it's been the pandemic, whether it's been, my teenagers are at home, or whether it's been, any number of things that that have created some difficulty in our lives. And the bud is something that we're hopeful for, we're grateful for. We see it on the horizon. It's like that light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a speeding locomotive, right? So we get to be grateful about that. And so for the next 60 seconds or so, we want each of you to powerfully go into the chat and tell us, what is your rose? What is your thorn? What is your bud? To really frame and set our energy for the conversation that we're going to have today. We see the responses coming in already, and it looks beautiful. Awesome. Loving those responses. Being able to travel again, Allison, I agree with you. And I travel for work, and now that the world is opening back up, I get to go all the places that I get to go. Susanna says she's grateful for family.
Family and health, I see that as a theme through here. Yeah.
Sandra says she's also grateful for her family. John, family and health. Love it, love it, love it. Neighbors coming together, collective action. Love that. Lydia says thorn, council dysfunction. Lydia, we've gone through that a couple times over the last 25 years. And that gets to be a growth opportunity for us. Cindy says spending time with my family. Love it. Denise, I'm grateful for being retired and having time to be on our city council. Congratulations and congratulations, and thank you for your service, Denise. Megan says, a renewed appreciation for being together. Wonderful. This is awesome. I love this, Erica. This is such an engaged group. Amaris said, yes. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you. Thank you for creating all of this wonderful energy. Christine says she's hopeful for the future, as are we. Wonderful. Great. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you, folks. Thank you, Connie. Elizabeth, yes, thank you. Pawan, thank you. Rita, lovely. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Love it. Nanette, Judy, thank you. Jackie, yes, growing and intractable affordability and homelessness issues, yes. And thank you for your attention and dedication to those issues. Love it. Great job, everyone.
I know the authenticity everyone is sharing is so great. I mean, it's the thorns are amazing. I know those are challenges, but I appreciate that everyone is being so open about those.
Absolutely. And so this energy is going to support us throughout the day. Now, one thing I meant to share with you, as Erica was going over my CV, we omitted that my first job, so education is a part of my DNA, but my first job ever was that of 7th grade math teacher at Lumberton Junior High. I was a middle school teacher. And so there are some days I miss middle school, not today because I get to be with all of you. But I often say that everything I learned about how to deal effectively with humans, I learned from my middle school students. And so we know that one other thing about middle school teachers is that we love pop quizzes. Now, let me allay your concerns. You folks are going to do wonderful. What we decided was to have a fun and engaging way to just begin to open the dialogue of DEI and how we get to see DEI through multiple lenses. Now, this is not about winning or losing. It's about winning or learning. So we all get to win here. And again, there are going to be about 6 or 7 true/false questions. So you can put your answers in the chat and we'll go over each of the answers as we're going through. Again, not about judgment, not about right or wrong, not about anything other than awareness. Where is our next level of opportunity where we get to grow in the space of DEI, and how can cultural intelligence serve as a wonderful bridge and a wonderful tool so that we get to successfully navigate each of these spaces. So, all right, so 6 or 7 questions, true, false. Everyone's going to be rock stars and we're going to do well because we're going to win or learn. And here is our first question. So this is a question about race and ethnicity. Humans can be divided into 3 scientific groups: Caucasoid, Mongoloid, and Negroid. Is that true or false? Now, when I'm a proud baby boomer, born in 1963, and in my elementary, middle, and high school, all of this was in my curriculum and textbooks. So why are you asking this question, Jacques? Because I'm just trying to lighten things up and open up the discussion. So what do we think? True or false? We see those answers coming in the chat. Got some false, got a lot of false, got some true. Wait a couple more seconds. And the answer to this question is false. There is scientifically only one race, the human race. What you're going to learn in this series is that race is a social construct, which is a fancy way of saying people made it up. Now, humans have always been a meaning-making species, and we've always sought to establish some sense of human order out of patterns and natural things that we see in our environment. But the scientific fact remains that humans are 99% genetically identical, that race is a social construct, that humans have always categorized other humans for the last 70,000 years, that humans have been the dominant species on the planet. And it's only been within the last 400 years that humans have decided to categorize other humans solely based upon the pigmentation of their skin. Great job, everyone. Next question. And even though, and so the interesting thing, one thing I want to share, yes, this was in textbooks all when I was growing up. And it's really interesting to see how many folks that we come in contact with really believe that we are scientifically distinct. And we are not. We are 99% genetically identical from a scientific standpoint. So, hey, cousins. Next question. This is a question about gender and gender in educational attainment. So, true or false? There are more men in the United States than women who have college degrees. What do we think here? And those answers are already starting to come. Okay, great job, everyone. There are more men in the United States than women who have college degrees. Wait a couple more seconds. Got a lot of false, got some true. I love it when it's, what is it? What is it? What is it? And John was candid. Hey, I don't know. And so you're going to know now, John. So the answer is false. There are approximately 10 million more women in the United States than there are men who have college degrees. Now, as we're receiving this information, again, this is all about awareness. We are not putting judgment in, but we just want to be aware because we know in the government space, in order to move up for promotional opportunities, oftentimes educational attainment is one of those minimum qualifications. And the qualification of a BA, a BS, a 4-year degree. And when we look in the government space, in terms of management and leadership, we see far more gendered male roles represented in leadership than we see far more gendered female roles. And isn't it interesting that on that issue of educational attainment, there are far more gendered female roles than males or men in the United States who have college degrees. So again, not about right or wrong, but about awareness. And so now we get to use those emotional intelligence tools that we're going to present shortly. We're going to get to use those cultural intelligence tools as a means to grow to that next level of elevation. Great job, folks. Next question. So this is a question on abilities. In the language module that we're doing next time, Erica, we're going to be talking about lots of social constructs. We are going to learn that race is a social construct, that gender is a social construct. Another social construct that we don't think about a lot is abilities, the concept of disabilities. There are no scientific definitions of what is a disability. There are legal definitions in a legal framework, but there are no scientific definitions because it is a social construct. So let's talk about abilities. The true-false question says 75% of disabled people living in the United States were actually born with their physical or mental impairment. 75% of disabled people living in the United States were actually born with their physical or mental or emotional impairment. And those answers are coming in. Great job, everyone. And someone's total guess is accurate because this answer is false. Of the people living with disabilities in the United States, only 15% were born with their physical, mental, emotional impairment. That means over 85% of people living with disabilities in the United States developed their impairments during the course of their life. So that's a major transformative change that occurred in the life of these folks, of these humans. And we have really been focusing on the physical barriers. And as we see how people living with disabilities are represented in leadership, represented in management and supervisory roles, or represented in education, represented in the nonprofit sector, represented in a multiplicity of lenses, we become aware that there are far more barriers than just the physical barriers that the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, speaks of. So again, not about judgment, but this is an invitation for awareness. Great job, everyone. A few more questions left. Next question deals with indigeneity. So here's an interesting one, two-part question. When Europeans arrived in America in the 15th century, there were approximately 1 million Native Americans living in the land that comprises the United States. Today, there are approximately 5 million Native Americans living in the United States. Question on indigeneity. People, the United States of America as a country is relatively young when you look at other countries in other parts of the world, about 270 years old since the founding of the United States. However, this land has been occupied for some 10,000 years. And how often do we presence to that millennia of historical heritage? And your answers are coming in. Answers come, some true, some false. Susanna, I love how your critical thinking skills work. And so the answer to this question, well, let's break it up. Today, there are approximately 5 million Native Americans living in the land, or living in the land that comprises the United States. That part of the statement is true. But the first part of the statement is false. When Europeans arrived in America in the 15th century, there were approximately 18 million Native Americans living in the land that comprises the United States. Now, when you look at the total indigenous population of North America, South America, and the Caribbean, that was a total indigenous population of 60 million inhabitants. And it's interesting when you compare the population of the Americas in the 15th century with the population of Europe, you see some interesting awarenesses. The population of Europe during that time was 20 to 25 million, as opposed to 60 million living in the Americas. Isn't that an interesting awareness? Because think about the whole concept of manifest destiny, open space, free land, all of these concepts that we have, we get to use our emotional intelligence tools that we're going to learn shortly to figure out how did this come into being? And the words that we use to describe the indigenous inhabitants. Yes, some of the civilizations we refer to as empires, like the Aztec Empire, the Mayan Empire, the Inca Empire. But think about all the other millions and millions of folks who were of indigenous descent, how we described those folks. And how has that come into our awareness today? So wonderful job, everyone. We're almost done. Again, true and false. California, Oregon, Colorado, and New Mexico, and Texas were states in the Republic of Mexico before they were states in the United States. Looking at questions of national origin. And again, as we look at our own state history, where do we begin to measure that history? Does it start with the gold rush? Did it start with indigenous folks? Did it start, where did it come from? And again, your answers are coming in fast and furious. And this is probably like Captain Obvious, because yes, the answer to this is true. California, Alta California, Baja California, Oregon, Colorado, Nuevo Mexico, and Texas were all states in the Republic of Mexico before they were states in the United States. Here's a fun one. The most common name in the world. The most common name in the world is John or Juan. What do we think, folks? We've all John Doe, John Frost, Jane Doe. That's for those of us who were acculturated in the United States. John is an incredibly common name, whether we are English speaking or Spanish speaking. So what do we think? Those answers are coming. Love it, love it, love it. So the answer here is actually false. The most common name in the world is Muhammad. And again, not about judgment, but just a point of awareness, another lens through which to see the world. And our final question, and you folks are doing amazingly well, the world's largest organized religion is Christianity. I happen to be a third-generation Roman Catholic. And again, Roman Catholicism, part of the Christian religion. It is one of the world's largest and major religions, as is Islam, as is Hinduism, as is Buddhism. But what is the largest? Now we know that there are 7.5 billion people on the planet. How many of them said they are Christians? Great job, everyone. Those answers are coming in fast and furious. And there are 7.5 billion people on the planet. There are 1.9 billion Muslims. There are 2.3 billion Christians, making Christianity the world's largest organized religion. Now, the world's fastest growing religion is Islam, but currently the world's largest organized religion is Christianity. And when you break down that 2.3 million, there are 1 billion Roman Catholics, of which I am a part. There is another 1.3 billion Protestants, evangelicals, Latter-day Saints are included in the Christian faith, as are Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, all total combined, making Christianity the world's largest organized religion. Great job, everyone. Give yourselves a hand, and I acknowledge you for doing well again, and would love for you to drop in the chat if there were new awarenesses, new understandings. Again, this is not about right or wrong, but this is about how do we expand our world view. And we're going to be talking about, as we acknowledge the lived experience of every human and recognize that that lived experience represents a truth, how then do we hold each of these multiple and competing truths to give visibility, to give acknowledgement to every human that is powerfully represented in our space? And that is through the modality of cultural intelligence. Have one more little multiple guess option for you here to really illustrate the concept of cultural intelligence. So we have a grasshopper, and you are presented with a multiple choice option. Is a grasshopper, is it a pet? Is it a pest? Is it an appetizer that we will drizzle with dark chocolate and raspberry sauce or something like that? And so what do we think through the lens of cultural intelligence, where we're talking about expanding our awareness, expanding our knowledge, reaching for that next level of elevation where we get to hold all of these multiple and competing truths? And we see you folks are Johnny on the spot. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And yes, you're right. It is, Dave, I love your perspective. It's just another creature. Why label it? And that is included in the response. So the answer is, through the lens of cultural intelligence, it is all of the above, given the particular situation and circumstance in which we find ourselves. So let's talk about cultural intelligence. One of the things that is clear, cultural intelligence is not a response to the events of 2020, okay? In fact, there are thought leaders in the organizational development space, in the organizational design space, in the human resources and development space, who have for decades been researching and analyzing the issue of how do I build and create effective teams, recognizing that teams are comprised of individual team members, and recognizing that these team members have different perspectives, different lived experiences, different worldviews, different backgrounds, different generations, speak different languages. And so how do we do that, recognizing that we have the situation that we had. And so the response among these thought leaders was the development of cultural intelligence. And so cultural intelligence, or the CQ, the cultural quotient, is having the capacity to relate to and work effectively with different groups of people across different cultures. Now, let's pause here because I'm an unapologetic word nerd. And so for some of you who may be word nerds, you're going to have fun in this module and you're going to have fun in this series. And so one more invitation, if you're not a word nerd, you may have the ability to develop your word nerd superpower skills. But let's spend a little time talking about the word culture. In this framework, we are talking about more than just national origin or more than just ethnicity. Again, remember what I said at the outset, that DEI through the lens of cultural intelligence is not partisan. It's not just talking about race, gender, or any of the protected status qualifications. We are talking about how to connect with, collaborate with, communicate with other humans. So the word culture is really, from an anthropological lens, we're talking about groupings of humans. How does one group of humans work effectively, communicate effectively, connect effectively with another group of humans that is either similar to or dissimilar to? That is the essence of this work. And this is all about the human perspective, looking at the sum total of humanity. And so cultural intelligence articulates core competencies and skill sets that organizations have the ability to cultivate and develop among its team members and leadership through the staff development process for the purpose of promoting greater diversity, greater equity, and greater inclusion within those organizations. Now, cultural intelligence flows from emotional intelligence. And for those of us who are familiar with emotional intelligence, whether it's through, if we work in social services or mental health or education, or even some aspects of public sector, we are familiar with the concept of emotional intelligence and social emotional learning. And there are 5 pillars of emotional intelligence or 5 pillars of social emotional learning. And they are self-awareness, self-management, also called regulation or co-regulation, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Self-awareness is, am I aware, am I fully present that I'm a holistic human being? I have a mind, body, will, emotions, all the things. My self-management or self-regulation, am I present to the fact that I get to regulate my body's responses to any given set of stimuli, and that my body is going to automatically respond to a certain set of stimuli, and I get to use my self-awareness piece to recognize what is actually happening to me. Social awareness is that concept or framework. Am I situationally aware of the world around me? Relationship skills. How can I, as a human, connect and create meaningful relationships with other humans around me? And responsible decision-making, given my values, given my norms of our society, can I be responsible in making decisions that are win-win, that serve myself and that serve the greater good? So that's the framework of emotional intelligence. Now, when you look at the framework of cultural intelligence, you see some interesting things. Number 1, also 5 pillars. Number 2, substantially similar to emotional intelligence, right? So again, going through the 5 pillars of cultural intelligence, self-awareness, just like the self-awareness piece in emotional intelligence. Now, the self-management framework in emotional intelligence is represented in the cultural intelligence framework of holding neutral space, of having no judgment, which is why we spend a lot of time creating safe spaces in these trainings, why we spend a lot of time presencing there is no judgment. This is not about right or wrong. And our concepts, excuse me, of judgment, we get to set aside as we are navigating this space. The framework of social awareness, also identically reflected in cultural intelligence, as social awareness or situational awareness. Am I aware of the world around me? Am I aware that my view, my worldview just happens to be my worldview? It's not the default answer key in the universe. And when you look at the last two pillars of emotional intelligence, of relationship skills and responsible decision making, we see them powerfully represented in the cultural intelligence framework of acknowledgement and alignment. Can I be that open, expansive growth mindset? Acknowledgement. And can I powerfully connect with other humans, setting my personal judgments of personal belief aside? That is alignment. And finally, responsible decision making. Do I recognize that there are multiple perspectives and multiple worldviews? And again, we get to collectively discern and define what is the best solution for any given cultural situation, and can we align and move forward collectively together? Now, Erica, I'm just taking a brief time check, and I think that we are nearing the top of the hour. One of the things that Erica and I didn't mention, and it's my fault, so I apologize about that, but we believe in practicing what we preach in the space of emotional intelligence. And so what we wanted to do in the middle of the training, we wanted to give everyone what we lovingly call that 7-minute stretch for all my baseball fans out there. So this is an opportunity for us to, for 7 minutes, let's move away from our screens. Let's take care of the personal needs that we get to take care of. Let's hydrate. Let's move our bodies. Let's really honor ourselves. And to the extent possible, if we could refrain from jumping back into the work environment, let's just stay in this space where we are reflective of the conversations that we have been engaging in thus far. And let's be prospectively reflective about the conversations that we're going to have going forward. So looking at the time, let's have everyone come back right at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock. Welcome back, everyone. We hope you had a wonderful opportunity to practice some self-care during that 7-minute stretch. We will hope that you honored your bodies. You had an opportunity to hydrate, to move around, to move away from the screen. Really, let's begin to practice what we preach. And welcome back. So we did cover a lot, and Rita asked a really awesome question that, Rita, you get the Apple of the Week award because this is the question that actually sets us up for the remainder of our training. So Rita asked the question, and it's in the chat. Cultural intelligence can vary depending on my personal ability to work with different groups or with different works. So would it be important to be aware of my own biases? Absolutely, Rita and colleagues. This is an invitation to explore what is our next level of elevation. And so in that self-awareness piece, we get to be critically aware, not from a judgment perspective, but from a growth perspective of where we are. And Rita and colleagues, the growth process is ongoing and continuous. And this is very, very different from, for those of us who were working during the era of political correctness. Political correctness, especially in the height of it in the 90s, was essentially for us HR folks, it was a vocabulary test. It was external, it was transactional. The HR folks, like myself, were essentially hall monitors, and we had a list. We want you to not to say any words on the don't list. Instead, substitute them with the words that are on the do list. We wanted everyone to behave externally. We were not focused on ways of being. Now, in the words of the famous radio commentator Paul Harvey, we get to tell the rest of the story. And the rest of the story is that this is a transactional process. It is both external and internal. And we are really focusing on what are our ways of being that influence our behavior, that influence our communication, that influence our actions, that influence our connections with other humans. And so being maximally self-aware really supports us in that process, either through the lens of cultural intelligence or through the lens of emotional intelligence. And you can see, as exhibited here in the frame, that they are one and the same. So excellent, excellent question. And Rita and colleagues, in successive modules, we're going to go over how, especially when we're talking about language and understanding DEI through the lens of implicit bias. Again, that's going to be in the next module, but we're really going to do a deeper dive there. So thank you so much for that question. Erica, are there any other questions or comments that I need to be aware of in the chat before we move on? Just want to make sure I don't leave anyone.
But I do want to make sure that people do know that you can reach out to me or to Jacques during the discussion, and we'll try and drop you in and make sure the answers are addressed.
Awesome. So let's continue. Let's do a little deeper dive in each of the frameworks. So 2 of the frameworks, or pillars, as we say, are maximum self-awareness and maximum situational awareness. And these 2 pillars together give us the ability to discern and articulate those attributes and characteristics that unite groups of people, and also what are those characteristics and attributes and ways of being that differentiates or divides groups of people. Again, the invitation is, let's always look for those attributes and characteristics that bring us together, that create those points of connection. Because again, this is about engagement. This is not about partisan. This is not about politics. And through a certain lens, and you can challenge me during the question and answer period, this is not even about social justice. This is about engagement, an effective engagement with humans. Might there be social justice outcomes? Yes. But the framework is a framework of engagement. It's a framework of engagement of each and every human. So, as I said at the outset, we always provide a reading list for our training participants. One of the books that we have on our reading list in this module is Don Miguel Ruiz's The 4 Agreements. And for any of you who've read The 4 Agreements, you know that Don Miguel Ruiz spends a lot of time talking about two factors that have powerfully shaped us as humans. And those two factors we absolutely had nothing to do with. And Don Miguel Ruiz is far more artful than I could ever be in describing how those factors shape us. So I'll do it in my own way. And those factors are birth and circumstances. Humans are a meaning-making species. And for the last 70,000 to 100,000 years, humans have created all sorts of narratives and spiritual stories and mythologies and explanations of why we are who we are, when through the lens of anthropology, it's really simple. We are who we are solely because of birth and circumstances. So let's take myself as an example. I was born in North America. I grew up in North Carolina. I am actually, I'm my family's historian. I've traced my family tree back 8 generations to 1760. I've located my great-grandmother's great-grandfather, Mr. George Keith. So that is the point of our American journey, was going back to 1760. And as a result of my lived experience in America and being born in North America and growing up in North Carolina, I present a certain way. First of all, I present as American. I present as English speaking, but also French speaking because of my biracial heritage. I shared with you earlier, I am 3rd generation Roman Catholic. I embrace a constitutional democratic Republican form of government. I embrace a free market economy. I am over 40, I'm actually 58. So as a baby boomer, I have a certain way of being. I'm a father, and so I have a certain way of being. Now, if we change North America and North Carolina, and now Jacques was born in North Korea, or Northern Germany, or in Northern Tunisia, or in Northern Ecuador, or in the Northern Philippines, I'm going to be a different human being. And again, no doing of my own, merely the anthropological factors of birth and circumstances. And I love this because, again, let's presence those cultural intelligence and emotional intelligence tools of self-awareness and social or situational awareness. We've heard that saying, you can't see the picture when you're in the frame. So this awareness allows us to step out of the frame and to see the picture of humanity, actually all 7.5 billion pictures of humanity. And it also, when we do that, it reminds me of that famous quote by the late Dr. Maya Angelou, that we are more alike than we are unalike. Yes, we've told ourselves all sorts of histories and mythologies and narratives and stories about why we're different, but this factor of birth and circumstances and the awareness of this factor gives us points of commonality and connection, so that even for those of us who embrace our spiritual practices and mythologies and our ways of being, we get to embrace them and also set them aside, because we know through the lens of anthropology, we are all aligned and we are all connected. What a wonderful awareness. And what a wonderful point of engagement and connection. So that, going back to Rita's question, should we be aware of our biases? Absolutely. But you're going to learn bias is not it doesn't make you a bad person. It merely makes you human. Because what social scientists will tell you, that all human beings have unconscious bias or implicit bias, that all human beings have had unconscious bias and implicit bias. And some social scientists and anthropologists say the reason that the human species has survived is because of unconscious bias or implicit bias. Because as humans were migrating throughout the planet over 100,000 years ago, we had to be able to, as humans, discern instantly, is this area safe or is it dangerous? Safe or dangerous? Sound kind of familiar, huh? Sounds kind of like fight or flight or freeze. Again, epigenetically transferred from one human generation to another human generation to what we have today. So when we get to that framework and when we get to that module in successive sessions, you're going to see I'm not a bad person, I'm just a human person. And welcome to the human race. So again, birth and circumstances and the awareness of these critically important factors really allow us to surrender to and embrace and celebrate who we are as humans. Powerful awareness, right? So again, as we continue through the pillars of cultural intelligence, there is the pillar of how do we suspend that judgment, right? So that requires us the ability to suspend judgment while assessing, while evaluating any given cultural situation. There is no default answer key in the universe, and let's get to that one now. So there's a recognition that there is no one dominant worldview, but rather multiple worldviews that each deserve equal recognition, equal respect, equal acknowledgement. Now, when we talk about acknowledgement versus agreement, we're going to talk about, again, what that is not, because I can imagine that there's some folks saying, well, acknowledgement, does that mean I have to agree with? And again, the answer is no. We get to be word nerds here and we get to part and parcel that out. But let's be clear, the American point of view is the American point of view, and not even all of America. If there are 7.5 billion people on the planet, that means there are theoretically 7.5 billion different worldviews and different perspectives. So just because we do things in a certain locale and that's how we do them, doesn't mean that's how the world does them. And again, this is the beginning of our next level of elevation as we're really appreciating, wow, like for example, how many Black people are there in Africa? It's a trick question. The same amount of Latino people in Ecuador. So Latino as a concept is an American social construct because in Ecuador, they are not Latino, they're Ecuadorian. In Africa, they don't, citizens don't perceive themselves as Black. They're African, they're Nigerian, they're Tanzanian, they're Kenyan. When I was talking with a colleague right before we came on. I was educated in France. I went to school at University of Dijon. When I was in France, I'm American. So we get to realize that our constructs are just our constructs, and that even in light and in recognition of our superpower status, of our imperial status, it still is not synonymous with, and that is the right answer. It just happens to be our answer. And that's what the pillars of cultural intelligence allow us to do, to discern and articulate where are the points of commonality, where are the points of distinction. And so now let's go to that essential element of mastering cultural intelligence. And that is recognizing the distinction between having a growth or expansive mindset, and we call that acknowledgement, versus having a fixed or closed mindset, and that is the framework of agreement. So we've already established that acknowledgement is an essential element of mastering cultural intelligence. Well, let's talk about agreement. And where did agreement come from? And for those of us who are history buffs and we remember the development of nation states in Western Europe, particularly the kingdoms of Spain, France, Portugal, and England, and the Kingdom of Spain is a wonderful illustrative opportunity here. So as King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella united the Kingdom of Spain, they created the concept of one land, one faith, one king. One land, España. Now we know, for those of us who, again, are history buffs, that Spain is made up of lots of different ethnic groups, lots of different languages, lots of different types of people. And in establishing the Spanish monarchy, with Spanish being the official language, Ferdinand and Isabella being the king and queen, and the Roman Catholic faith being the official religion, in establishing that universality and that agreement. Anything that wasn't consistent with Ferdinand and Isabella's worldview was seen as anathema, was expelled. So you had a very strong and historic North African influence called the Moors. They were expelled from Spain. You know, they had thriving Jewish communities there, thriving Protestant communities there. Those communities went through various sorts of either forced assimilation or forced expulsion, again, emphasizing the concept of one land, one faith, one king. And many of the other Western European kingdoms embraced that whole mindset. So at the Kingdom of France, when the nation state of France united under itself, again, made up of lots of different ethnic groups, lots of different languages, lots of different religions and spiritual practices other than Roman Catholicism. And in the unification of France and in the establishment of the British monarchy and the United Kingdom, any of those elements that were not in alignment with what was a proclamation of the king and queen, including faith, including religion and things of that nature, were then seen as contrary to and treated as such. Now that worldview was exported to the New World as Europeans came to and settled the New World. And so the whole concept of one land, one faith, one king, again, migrated and mutated into the American way. Truth, justice, and the American way. I was a Superman fan way back in the day when Superman used to be in black and white, when we had a black and white television, not a color TV. Yes, I am that old, but I remember, when it came on, truth, justice, and the American way. And again, a good thing if you're accultured in America. But if you're from Brazil, if you're from Australia, if you're from Nigeria, if you're from the Tongan Islands, does that resonate with you? And let's just put a pause there. So agreement is about being in complete ownership of one particular worldview. Another aspect of agreement, it is very binary in nature. So the framework of agreement is as if all of humanity is divided into two camps, the them camp and the us camp. And it is typified by judgment. And think about it, folks, we judge ourselves. We really judge the people who are not in our groups, right? But there's this whole concept and theme of judgment. And the way we present the world and all of humanity in this binary framework, think about politics, think about media, think about social media, liberal or conservative, Democrat versus Republican, red versus blue, rich versus poor, white versus black. All of these binary relationships as if, and even let's go a little further, to vaccinate or not to vaccinate, to mask or not to mask, telecommuting or, staying in the office. When we're presenting these issues, well, let me say it this way, for those of you who have read the Crucial Conversations book or taking one of the Crucial Conversations trainings, and I know Erica and we are planning, that's our last framework, so that's the pièce de la résistance of this entire work, that we're going to learn, and this is not a spoiler alert, but a teaser. Crucial Conversations talks about avoiding the sucker's choice, because the writers of Crucial Conversations recognize that most humans have this mindset of looking at the world binary. And so in the Crucial Conversations framework, they talk about this in terms of candor versus kindness. And the theme there is avoid the sucker's choice. First of all, there are more than two choices, far more than two choices. This is a universe of abundance, and it only depends on our perspective or lens through which we see the world, through which we see our factual circumstances, for which we see the situations in which we find ourselves as humans. The minute you removed those binary limitations, guess what? A world of opportunity opens up to us. So just like in the Crucial Conversations framework that we're going to talk about in later models, right now, as we're talking about this binary relationship between them versus us, left versus right, there is no comfortable middle ground that we can thoughtfully consider what are all our various options. And that's what the framers of cultural intelligence wanted to do. So in this space of acknowledgement, this acknowledgement gives us the ability to hold multiple and competing truths. Imagine, for those of you who practice yoga, that acknowledgement is that powerful mountain pose, right? It is neutral, it is powerful, it is grounded. And from that mountain pose, you can move into a multiplicity of different poses, a multiplicity of different options. And that's the same way this functions here. Acknowledgement is that neutral ground that we're not going to presuppose, I have the answer, I know what the answer is, but we're going to just be still without judgment. We're going to practice that co-regulation. We're going to breathe. We're going to thoughtfully consider, what are my options? Where are all the different ways we can grow? Example, again, you folks know I'm a human resources consultant. I've worked exclusively in the government and nonprofit space. All during the pandemic, we've been working with, well, let me say this. Before the pandemic, we had lots of conversations about telework. And overwhelmingly, many organizations were like, nope, teleworking's not for us. Teleworking's not for us. We need to be able to have line of sight supervision. And then an amazing thing happened. The global pandemic, where we literally could not come to work. And guess what? Teleworking became a thing. And again, among other organizations, especially, I'm very familiar, again, I travel from coast to coast, and in the Washington, D.C. area, all federal government agencies have introduced telework for decades and decades ago. Again, quality of life issues, traffic congestion and calming issues, also employee satisfaction and employee productivity issues. And so if we ask the question, rather than from the binary framework, to telework or not to telework, if we said, what are all the different possible modalities in which we could perform our jobs? Recognizing that some folks really need to be on site, and also recognizing through the blessing and the benefit of technology that it is possible to perform work in a number of modalities, and offer that to our constituents, whether it be our teams, our leadership teams, what have you, and just have a blue sky discussion, as opposed to presenting things in a binary, are you for it or are you against it framework? Because again, the 7th grade math teacher is going to tell you, from a mathematical perspective, if you present something as binary, you got a 50-50 chance they're going to say A or B. And then the narrative that we come away with, it's like, oh my goodness, society is so polarized. No, it isn't. You only asked me a question that I have 2 choices. So I could flip a coin and it would be a 50-50 shot as to whether I would go A or B. But if I asked the question from a space of acknowledgement, recognizing there are multiple solutions, there are multiple options, and now how can, given all these multiple options, what are all the different ways we can go? That's not a binary framework. We're opening it up. And what could we create in that framework? So some really interesting food for thought. So again, that's an example of having an acknowledgement mindset, recognizing that there are multiple worldviews, and also recognizing that life is not binary. The writers and the authors of Crucial Conversations had it right. There's more than candor and kindness. And so let's avoid the sucker's choice everywhere. in politics, in government, in our social services, in education, in business and finance, in our family lives, everywhere. That is our next level of elevation where we get to grow and where we get to expand. And from this framework, acknowledgement leads to another word, and that A word is alignment. Even saying it has like magical, like, ooh, ah, alignment. Because alignment, purely and simply, is agreement without judgment. Can we, in recognition of our differences, in recognition of our different perspectives, in recognition of our different worldviews, can we move those things to the side and for the benefit of our organizations, for the benefit of our greater community, can we align to move forward a collective agenda that serves all people? Now, like you and like Erica at ILG, I come from an organization that is committed to the public sector and committed to public service. We believe in what we all do in the public sector. And what a powerful way of being to embrace that we can come from this point of alignment in recognition of our stuff, right? Where we get to align and where we get to recognize that there is a next level of elevation, and it is through this exercise. Powerful awareness. So if you remember the birth and circumstances conversation and the Don Miguel Ruiz conversation, we discovered some awarenesses that despite our generational differences, our gender differences, our orientation differences, our racial and ethnic differences, our neurodiversity differences, humans are more alike than we are unlike. That all humans want to be seen. All humans want to be heard and valued. All humans desire that their families thrive. All humans want our children to be safe and to go to good schools and live in safe communities. All humans want to be connected to the greater community around them. All humans want to be understood, like really understood from the heart space. All humans want to be protected and safeguarded. And all humans really want to be celebrated and want their lives to have meaning and significance, regardless of how I vote, regardless of what the external looks like, regardless of what's going on internally. These are other points of alignment and connection that the tools of cultural intelligence invite us to embrace as we are, and I'm going to use Erica's terminology, operationalizing the work of cultural intelligence, operationalizing the work of emotional intelligence. Again, to be more effective in serving the public good. This is our charge. This is our mission. Are we well able and capable? Yes, we are. And so as we wrap up, we get to ask ourselves, do we want to be right or do we want to be successful? Do we want to be right in the sense that we're playing the win-lose game? I'm winning at other people's expense? Or do we want to be successful and create the win-win? Which reminds me of something else, folks. DEI is not about winners and losers. We recognize conversations here are difficult because people have a lived experience that, oh my goodness, if we're engaging in these types of conversations, that means I'm going to have to lose so that another individual, so that another group can win. That's why I say these conversations are not partisan. They are not political. They are human in nature. Because in elevating and seeking that next level of elevation as humans, part of our humanity is we get to bring everyone along with us. You know, there was an initiative of the federal government and state governments as well in the space of education during the George W. Bush years of No Child Left Behind? What if we had a concept that no human will be left behind? What a powerful way of being, what a powerful shift. And that each human life has significance and meaning and has value and gets to positively contribute to this beautiful society and beautiful community and beautiful planet of ours. What a wonderful awareness. And so now what I'd like to do is a visioning exercise that really focuses on the concept of acknowledgement. And as Erica and I said, we're not going to put folks into breakout groups, but for this visioning exercise, I am going to stop sharing the screen so that we all get to participate. So I'm going to stop sharing momentarily, and I'm going to lead us through an exercise. This is such a beautiful picture. It's so great seeing all of your beautiful faces. Ah, how lovely. So this is an exercise. Again, I'm a baby boomer, so it's adopted from Mr. Rogers and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and the whole concept of won't you be my neighbor. So I'm going to invite you all just to be fully present. For those of you who are not on screen, I'm inviting you to connect with my words. And again, I'm going to ask you if you'd be so kind as to close your eyes. And I'm going to set a timer. This is only going to be a 2-minute exercise, but I want us to all close our eyes, and I want you to just regulate your breathing and really open your mind and hearts as we drop into this space of acknowledgement. I want you to think of someone who has helped you along your life's journey. I want you to bring to mind that someone special who acknowledged you, who acknowledged your uniqueness, your humanity, your specialness. Maybe it was a teacher. Maybe it was a neighbor. Maybe it was one of your friends from elementary school or high school. It could be a grandparent or a mentor. Could be a coworker, someone that you're working with right now. Maybe that person is close to you now, or maybe they're far away. And it's even possible, in my own circumstance, maybe this special person has transitioned from this life and they're on to the next. So really drop into your core and think about the impact that these special people had on each and every one of our lives. No matter where they are, deep down, they have always wanted you to succeed. They've always wanted the best for you. They have always cared about you beyond measure, sometimes maybe more than you even cared about yourself. And they have always encouraged you to be true to the best that is within you. I want you to notice the sensations going on in your body right now. We're using that co-regulation, that self-awareness tool. Note how your skin feels. Note how your temperature feels. Is there a part of your body that feels especially warm or safe or comfortable? And I want you to think about those people. Think about what they look like. Think about, do they look like you? Or do they look like someone else? Are they the same as you, or are they different than you? And if they're different, and they were rooting for you more than you were rooting for yourself, what does this new level of awareness, what does this show us? What does this show or teach you about what's possible in this space of acknowledgement? I want you to, wherever these individuals are, I want you to send them from your heart space. I want you to send them acknowledgement and affirmation. We started this conversation with gratitude. We get to end this with gratitude. Let's send gratitude and thank them, because you are where you are now because of their energy investment, their time investment, their money investment, their love investment in each and every one of you. And just acknowledge them for 10 seconds more. And on the count of 3, I'm going to bring you back. 1, 2, and 3. Welcome back into the space, everyone. And as we open up in just a few minutes, I'm going to ask you folks to share how that acknowledgement exercise gets to create a bridge to doing the acknowledgement work in an emotional intelligence space, and how we transform our organizations. So as we conclude our presentation, do we want to be right or do we want to be successful? We want to be successful. And as we conclude, what are the positive action steps we can take to meet this moment? So first of all, let's grow into our American ideal with eyes wide open and full awareness that if we were a dating app, it would be complicated, right? It's complicated because it's not all one thing, and that's okay. That we get to acknowledge that there's more than just this binary experience. I mean, they're all good or all bad, but the human journey and the human experience goes through multiple courses and avenues and approaches. And it's not always a straight linear line that dictates progress. Let's recognize the power of the words that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men have created equal, that they are endowed with certain inalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And let's recognize that those words have a different meaning today than when they were authored back in 1776. And let's recognize the folks in 1776 meant what they said when they said that all men are created equal. But through the journey of our American experience, we have expanded that awareness and allowed more people to participate in the political space, in the economic space, in the educational space, in all of the spaces. That this is yet another invitation to continue to grow, to be more effective, and yes, to create a more perfect union. Let's actively practice acknowledgement, that growth, expansive mindset, and recognition that we are more alike than we are unalike. And let's practice that over the mindset of close-mindedness or agreement. Here's one. Let's examine or re-examine conflict and how we engage and deal with conflict. And let's see conflict as an opportunity to grow, as an invitation to grow, as a healthy part of the growth process. Now, this next one, we get to say to everybody more than once, that we get to, and especially in the government space where we work, let's recognize the humanity in everyone. Everyone everyone, especially when we do not agree with their perspective, when we do not agree with their political perspective, when we do not agree with how they voted, when we do not agree with what their worldview is, when we are not going to unfriend, we're not going to unfollow, we're not going to cancel. We're going to move into a space of alignment. We are going to focus on our mission and vision and our commitment to the public service, that in spite of all our differences, we get to set those aside for the benefit of the common good that we collectively serve. Now, we say in the transformational space that growth begins at the end of our comfort zone. So let's get comfortable being uncomfortable. And finally, let's recognize that what happened in 2020 was not episodic. What happened in 2020 was a planetary reset, and it was the entire Earth inviting us into a next level of elevation, into a next level of human connection and empathy and understanding. And let's recognize that this work and these conversations are not the flavor of the week, but we are going to be doing these types of work for generations and generations and generations and years and years and years to come. I want to thank you each for your engagement. I want to thank you each for your time, your attention, the energy that you created in this convening. At this point in time, we'd love to open it up for questions and feedback. And while you're formulating your questions, I did want to share the reading list that we have developed for you in terms of how do we maximize our cultural intelligence and continue to grow and expand on it between now and the next time that we meet again. So we have 5 books for you, and you'll notice these are not DEI books. These are personal growth and development books, because we need to, as for some of you who may listen to Abraham Hicks, we need to get ready, to get ready, to get ready, to be ready, to be ready, to be ready, right? So how are we presencing our emotional intelligence, our cultural intelligence, our cognitive capacity to receive more? And so these are the books that we have recommended for you. The first book I've already referenced many times during the course of the training, and that is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. The next book is by Malcolm Gladwell. He's a fabulous author and does some amazing work in the space of organizational development. And the book Outliers is the book that we have recommended. That the theme of Outliers is focusing on outcomes and results. And in order to change outcomes and results, we get to recalibrate and change the systems who produce those outcomes. You know, we've heard folks say, oh, the system's broken, the system's broken. I take a different position as a practitioner of cultural and emotional intelligence. I don't think the system's broken. I think it's producing that which it was intended to produce. And so if we want different outcomes, let's recalibrate the system that is more effective to our mission, our vision, our goals. The next book, written by Dr. Carol Dweck, who is a professor at Stanford University. This book radically changed my life, and it is Growth Mindset. Dr. Dweck talks about the power of neuroscience, the power of the brain, and the cognitive capacity of the brain, that the brain is a muscle. And we can, most humans only use like 10 to 15% of their brain capacity. Imagine if we double that, how more effective we would be as leaders, as public servants, as humans. The next book is a fun book, Sapiens by Dr. Yuval Noah Harari. Much of our anthropological curriculum in this training and subsequent trainings comes from the work of Dr. Harari. This is the 100,000-year history of humans being the dominant species on the planet. So the play on word, Homo sapiens. So that's this book. And finally, we have a book because we are all leaders. And Dr. Brene Brown does some fabulous work in the space of transformational leadership. And so we offer the book Daring Greatly to you. So that is our reading list. And now we would love to open up for questions and feedback. And Erica, are there questions in the chat?
So far, there are no questions in the chat related to the conversation, though there was a question about the PowerPoint being shared, and we did commit to doing that, so we will be emailing that out to you all.
Okay, wonderful.
Any others? If you would like to raise your hand, you can do that, or you can type any questions into the chat, and we will do our best to answer as they come through.
And I also wanted to presence that you have some other slides here, Erica, that I know that we want time to go through in terms of next. So you let me know when you're ready to do that.
Yeah, I don't see any popping in and I don't see any hands yet, which means everybody might be okay with sort of where we are right now. But what I do think we'll do is if you do have any questions, feel free to raise that hand or write them in the chat. And when I'm finished, we'll still have a little bit of time to answer those.
Awesome.
At the conclusion. So just a few housekeeping notes for those of you that do need to step off. Well, this is session 1, and what a great job, Jacques, for just setting that foundation for the cultural intelligence, getting us in the right mindset, helping us understand some of the key principles so that we can move into session 2, 3, and 4 with all the right things, all the right language. And the second session is actually developing the language of cultural intelligence and building that library. So again, we talk at ILG about how do we do this on the ground? How do we operationalize? This session and this series in particular is really going to help you do the work, not just talk about the work. And so the next session is going to be very much a hands-on deep dive, and there will be breakouts, there will be interactivity really related to developing that language. We are going to open up registration, and we're going to think about how we do this in a way that's equitable for those that wanted to participate today that couldn't, and those of you that have participated today and want to continue. We're working through that, but anticipate that we will unveil the kickoff or the registration for this within the next 7 to 10 days at the latest. But what I did prior is I definitely gave a preview link to those that registered for our info session, and I'll probably give a preview link to you all since you are part of session 1. There will not be a lot of time for you to register. We can't give too much time to leave it open for others as well, but we'll use similar processes for the registration for session 1 when we open up session 2. And we will be doing them in order so you don't have people registering for sessions that they maybe can't participate in. Next slide. Another thing that you should know is that we are so committed to this Leading Local series and really thinking about what are the biggest and most complex issues local leaders are dealing with. We heard equity was a big part of the challenges, and that so many are struggling with how do we approach it, how do we tackle it, how do we go beyond political correctness. This is one part of that with our cultural intelligence series. We're also launching this week another series on bridging divides, which speaks to that polarization that Jacques mentioned, that speaks to the difficulties so many of you are having within your councils, within your boards, within your communities, and that heightened level of discourse and challenging language and challenging personalities sometimes. How do you deal with those? So we've got a 4-part series on the bridging divides, and the first session is going to be in just 2 weeks or a little over 2 weeks on practical skills so that you can start bridging divides between colleagues, constituents, and the community. And this will be another series that runs through the end of the summer. So that'll be launched this week. We think it'll be very popular, but we will not have caps on this one, so there'll be plenty of space. And again, another free session from ILG. And that one's in partnership with Braver Angels. Next slide. Couple other things. I think you're all on our mailing list, but if you have any other colleagues that need to know about this or others that you think would be interested in knowing what ILG does and how we do it, please stay connected to us and stay informed through our social channels or our newsletter, which is really the fastest way to get information from us. We do try and post as much as we can electronically, and we like to highlight on social as well. But if you're a member of our mailing list, you will be the first to know about the things that we promote and the things that we offer to our local government leaders. Next slide. Oops. And if you want to stay in touch with Doc and I, or if you have any questions related to this session, please reach out to us, either one of us, via email. ILG is handling all the registrations. I want to thank you all for reaching out to me, especially those of you that weren't sure if you could make it, wanted to share your registration info to make sure that people on the wait list could join in. Really gracious of you, and please do continue to have that gracious spirit in the next session as we continue to get lots of interest around this session. And then Jacques is an expert on this stuff, so make sure you connect with him. He has fantastic work in the DEIB space. And then we will have a recording. As you know, we are recording this, and we will be pausing that recording in a second. We'll make that available with the slide deck, and that will be posted for everyone to see. And the future sessions, the breakout groups will not be recorded, but the main sessions will be, so that we can get the word out as many as we possibly can. And with that, we say thank you for joining us, and we want to open it up for questions if anybody has any that they would like to share with the group. I'm not seeing any. Jock, do you?
Not seeing it. Yeah. So, and again, and Eric, I will just reiterate Erica's invitation that if you'd like to follow up with, and this happens where folks want to have private conversations, so you do have our contact information, please reach out to me. I would love to. I love this work. I've been doing this work for several years, and I travel all across the country doing this work. So I love doing this work in California, which is our home. And I will also be at the California Special Districts Association coming up meetings. So I will have an opportunity to connect with some of you there. And Erica and I are actively planning other collaborations to support you in the work that you all do. So just really, really grateful and appreciative to you, Erica, for the opportunity to be here to share with our other colleagues and fellow compatriots in the public sector. So thank you for the work that you all do. And I just acknowledge you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. Hope to see you in the next session.
Bye, everyone.
Almost alive. Congrats.